Find out how we've got Indian people, for example, compared to African people, we have to go back to Africa 300,000 years ago when the Anunnaki created the first Homo sapiens sapien from Neanderthal DNA and their own alien DNA. And they created 7 men, 7 women, which then bred over and over and over again. The Anunnaki used them to mine for gold here. But over the period of time, the Anunnaki also then took them to Mesopotamia to help with some of the other duties there with the other Anunnaki, but also some of them ended up traveling themselves. So we've got a record of when they actually arrived here in India, and that was approximately 50 to 60,000 years ago. Now, by the time Inanna took people here from here 10,000 years ago, there was a mixture of skin colour now, because I'll follow in the next video. Following on from my previous videos about India and Africa and how the Indian people were the Indian people. So we've got the proof that the Africans went to India and settled there 50 to 60,000 years ago. Now, prior to that, 100,000 years ago, is when the Anunnaki started to breed with the African women, and that gave rise to the olive-skinned people in Mesopotamia, which is Iraq, Middle East, basically. So we've got the darker-skinned African people still living there. We've now got olive-skinned people living there, and we've got the darker-skinned people over in Africa. So Inanna, who was given the Indus Valley as the area that out of the 4 locations that was given, she was given the Indus Valley. She took with her some of the olive-skinned people, who then bred with the Africans that were already there. It's no surprise then that Indian people that wear turbans, if their god, their original god, was Inanna, who happens to wear, you guessed it, a turban. They did actually wear them, not just Inanna, but other Anunnaki wore them. So we're basically now at the period where Inanna has taken olive-skinned people to India compared to the African people. And they were called the Irans, pronounced probably wrong. The name originally given to the people who were said to speak an I'm terrible at pronunciation, Indo-European language, who were thought to have settled in prehistoric times from ancient Iraq and northern India subcontinent, which basically means that they were originally from Mesopotamia, which is what I just basically said in the previous video. So it's now all making sense. However, follow for the next video, there's something interesting. This is interesting because these islands here are actually part of India, from what I understand. Now, these islands have in previous times had different type of people there. When I say different type of people, some tribes in those islands, as you read here, carry 2 to 3% genes from the unknown hominid source. In other words, my guess is that there was probably not necessarily Devisons, or I can't never pronounce stuff, or Homo erectus or Homo florensis, etc., but possibly another hominid that was there. So when the African people finally got there, they bred with whatever species was there, just as all over the world different species bred with different species of hominid, including Homo sapiens sapien. So my guess is there was previously a hominid there that we don't know what it was, and it died out. I am now ready to tell you where Atlantis is. Now, if you've watched my previous videos on Atlantis, you know who the Atlanteans are, because I worked it out unlike everyone else, and I have had 0 people debunk that. So I know it sounds like I'm being big-headed, but when you spend all your life researching and you're the only one that comes up with stuff, then hey, I will pat myself on the back, and I will be telling you in the next video where Atlantis is. Before I tell you where I believe Atlantis is, we need to look at where the other researchers go wrong to work out whether I'm the right one and the only person that's ever figured it out. And the reason for that is because they go by Plato. And Plato was around 348 BCE. And Plato talks about Atlantis being 9,000 years before his time. So if we have a look here, around 11,000 to 12,000 years ago, we were hunter-gatherers. In other words, Uggs, lots of Uggs as their language. In other words, no written language, etc. came until thousands and thousands of years later, which means everything would be verbal unless we've got proof that there was a written language, even by the Atlanteans themselves, which we don't. So we have to assume then that the information is verbal. Now, in Plato's description, he says that Atlantis is 3,100 miles away from Athens. Now, people go by this, and this is what's crazy. They shouldn't do that, because not only are these our ancestors 9,000 years ago were Ugg people, Ugg. Also, Athens didn't actually come into existence until then. So that's a few thousand years, well, 7,000, 8,000, 9,000 years before Athens actually was even founded. So how they could work out where Athens was, it wouldn't even been called Athens 9,000 years before that, or 8,700 years, whatever it is, before that. So this is why researchers go way wrong when they're looking at everything to do with Plato's writings. And obviously, if you've read or listened to an audiobook of Plato's writing, you will come across the fact that he pinpoints things so accurately that there's so much information that would have been passed down Chinese whispers from 9,000 years to an Egyptian priest who gave it to a friend of Plato's, who then gave it to Plato. And they described so much in so much detail: smells, colours, depth of lakes. No, absolutely no. Now, the other problem is, here it says in Plato's, the founders of Atlantis were said to be half god, half human. Now, we have to see whether there was any other writings out there, and funny enough, there was. Emerald Tablets of Thoth talk about Ningazida, or Thoth, same person, and obviously he had offspring, so he was an Anunnaki, he was a god, and he had offspring which would have been demigods, which would have also been in that era. Now, if you've watched my previous video about who the Anunnaki were, you know I'm referring to the concentric circles. I'm going to run out of time here. Keep watching, because hopefully you're now understanding that you can't fully believe everything in Plato's version, which is what a lot of people, virtually everyone, bases their research. As I get closer to telling you where I believe Atlantis is, I really need you to understand why I got to that conclusion, because if I just told you where it is, you'd be going, that doesn't make sense. But as you've already seen in my previous video, I prove that the other researchers, unfortunately, have been following Plato and therefore have got it wrong. So the reason why I feel I've got it right is because I've gone through these steps. So basically, who were the players at the time? Now, if you watch one of my earlier videos, I prove again who the Atlanteans were. No one's debunked it. Do we have any records of destruction 9,000 years ago? Well, actually we do, and that's another reason why I believe we know where it is. And where were the players? Really important, because obviously where the other people were on Earth relates to where Atlantis is, believe it or not. And have we found anything under the water? In other words, anything sunk? Yes, we 900 videos. Thank you so much to all of you guys, my followers, the casual people, and even the people that sort of want to debate or tell me facts, and then I ask them for proof of those facts and then they disappear. But even those I welcome. Now, what's going to happen in the following videos? Well, I'm going to carry on with the ancient India. Hopefully you're enjoying those videos at the moment. I'm enjoying making them, and I'll be going through their Vimanas and all sorts of things that you may not even know about ancient India, so it's quite interesting. And then obviously we're going to move over to Scandinavian history, which is where we get Thor, etc. And then I'm going to be going around different countries, England, Australia, and various different places, Teotihuacan, you name it, I'll go there, Göbekli Tepe, etc. So there's so much more to learn, as well as obviously catching back up with more modern ufology type stuff. So keep watching and follow. I've just started a Facebook group called Our True History. I know there's some people out there that want to send me pictures of what they've seen, etc., UFOs. So I thought a Facebook group, there's no one on their own, just me. So feel free to join Our True History on Facebook. Please think before you post a comment like that. So this guy here is a Christian author, makes money selling books about God. Let's be honest, do you think he's going to agree with Sitchin? So Sitchin says there's aliens, he says no, there's God. you're going to get him to debunk him so he can sell more books. That's logical. So let's have a look at some of the things that he says. So here it says, if the planet, in other words Nibiru, their home planet, is real, no cuneiform tablet describes a planet by any name beyond Pluto. Now, what this person, I was going to be rude there, Michael, hasn't done, he hasn't gone to the Iraq Museum and looked through hundreds of thousands of tablets and then said, no, I can't find it. Bearing in mind there's tablets in the Louvre, there's tablets in Nineveh Library, there's tablets in the British Museum. There is basically Sumerian cuneiform tablets all over the world. Hundreds of thousands of them. So he's not gone everywhere and read them. Because if he went everywhere, he'd be frightened that he'd actually find the actual correct tablets. So he's not going to do that. So just by the process of not looking, he can then on his website say there is no tablet that says XYZ. But if he looked, he would find it just as obviously Sitchin did. Now, the Iraq Museum, for example, do not describe, so this is their website, they do not describe each tablet. In other words, you would have to go there and read it. So that's another reason why this numpty's wrong. Oh, did I call him a numpty? What a shame. So there's also, bearing in mind, Sitchin has been studying Sumerian for at least the 60s. So he's obviously been around a bit, and whereas this person's probably only just started researching what Sitchin's talking about. Now, the tablets here, it says, tablets are part of a cache of thousands that were looted artifacts purchased by Hobby Lobby and seized by the government. So, in other words, when you can't find tablets, do not blame Sitchin. There's governments as well as supposed groups that go into Iraq and smash them up, etc. So again, another reason why Sitchin's right. Now, also what this numpty, done it again, probably didn't realise is that there's cuneiform tablets in the Morgan Library that actually depict all the correct amount of stars and planets and moons in our solar system, which includes their own planet. So all you have to do, people, is just have a little bit of common sense. So when you've got someone that's a Bible person, he is going to try his hardest. So just put that out of your head. Unless you've done the research, because obviously you're going by someone else, do what I do. I do the research. You do it now. Your turn. So enough. Fed up. What's your opinion on this? I think this is going to be a fake setup. So let me explain it. Zahi Hawass is saying he believes the body of the Pharaoh Khufu, which is inside the Great Pyramid, he believes it's inside there, underneath the Queen's chamber. Now, no mummies have ever been found in any pyramid whatsoever. Watch my videos, I totally prove that. And so, obviously, the pyramids were not tombs. I mean, just look at what a tomb looks like, inside a tomb. There's nothing inside a pyramid, but this is what's inside a tomb, all the writings and everything. So I'm of the opinion that they're going to try and pretend there's a body using LiDAR, etc., which is what's happening at the moment at the Great Pyramids. They're actually doing more tests. So if they pretend there's a body in there, that ends the ancient aliens. So I think they're faking it. The video you're about to watch after I finish talking is a clip from a video that's on my Patreon page, and it's called Everything You Need to Know About Spirits. Now, there's 3 segments at the moment, and every week there's another segment. Now, there's loads of videos on my Patreon page already. There's 41, but so the clip you'll be watching is from segment 1, and it's going through absolutely everything you need to know about spirits. So hopefully you like it. If you do like it, what you see in a second, the clip of it, feel free to watch the longer video, way longer, on my Patreon page, which is called Our True History. Thank you very much. Was there really a Big Bang, and what's that got to do with spirits? It's when spirits first started. Stephen Hawking suggested that if the universe is expanding, then if we rewind it, we would see it go back to a single point of time. Now, is that the only reference we have to the Big Bang? Actually, the Emerald Tablets of Thoth talk about the Big Bang. Thoth was a god in ancient Egyptian times. text for the emerald tablets first appeared in a number of early medieval Arabic sources, the oldest of which dates to the late 8th or 9th century. It was translated into Latin several times in the 12th and 13th century. Numerous interpretation and commentaries followed. There were 10 tablets which were divided into 13 parts. The last two are so great and far-reaching in their importance that at present it is forbidden to release them to the world at large, so it's claimed. Because of these translations by different people over centuries, we can say with some degree of certainty that the translations copied something. Sadly, the original tablets have been lost or hid away from view. This is the text about the start of the universe from the Emerald Tablets. In the beginning there was void and nothingness, a timeless, spaceless nothingness, and into nothingness came a thought, purposeful, all-pervading, and it filled the void. There existed no matter, only force, a movement, a vortex of vibration, of purposeful thought that filled the void. Although the creation of the universe in the tablets come from a thought, it's the only thing we have to go on. And it actually makes sense, because everything in the physical world has a top, bottom and two sides. Yet the universe may not. Only a thought is endless. Just a few simple questions. I can't answer them, but I'm sure you guys can. So first of all, if there's a dome, why are they sending rockets up? What's the benefit if they're going to waste money when it hits the top and breaks? Now, I have been told that someone said that they're trying to break free out the top. But why not do it to the side? That's a lot easier than it is sending rockets up. So that's the first question. Second question is, why advertise that you're sending up rockets to up in the sky if you're trying to do it quietly and we're not supposed to know there's a dome? So that's the second question, because obviously we've got people sending up rockets all the time. So what, why are they notifying us that they're sending it up to hit the dome? So I'll answer that one. That's the second question. Halley's Comet is my favourite one that no one ever answers. So Halley's Comet comes around every 70 odd years. So if you can tell me who the person is every 70 years that sends Halley's Comet up inside the dome, because if it's outside the dome, then there's space. And of course there's people out there that say there's no such thing as space. And then they say there's water, but obviously we can see the trail of ice from Halley's Comet, in which case it's space still. So who's the person that sends it up and every 70 odd years? Because it's every... We know about Halley's Comet for thousands of years. There's actually a written record. So if you could answer that, that would be cool. And the final piece to the resistance one. Now this is a amateur, not NASA, amateur rocket up in America, which would be pretty much almost in the middle of your flat Earth. So let's have a look at this. Now as you see, the camera shows a equal distance, everybody. Not one side further than the other. And the reason for that is because it's on a ball. Now this is another amateur rocket, this time in Australia, which is about 4,000 miles from the edge, but 20,000 miles from the other side. So in other words, it shouldn't be in the middle. And then when you watch, unfortunately, there we are, steady shot there. So it's equal, and you only get it equal if you're in a ball. On a ball. So if no one's ever going to answer that one, that's because you can't answer why it's equal, because obviously on a ball it's always going to be equal. So yeah, there you go. So no one's going to answer those. So let's all forget the flat Earth and the dome and just get on with our lives. Right, don't hate me for this. This is Admiral Byrd. And I'm just going to point out where some sort of dome and flat earthers go. I know I shouldn't keep on about this, but it just really infuriates me that no one does their own research. So I'm here to help you guys, so you can thank me later. So this is Admiral Byrd. He's the person that they all quote when they say you're not allowed in Antarctica. So have a listen to this.
Is there any unexplored land left on this Earth that might appeal to adventurous young Americans?
Yes, there is. And not up around the North Pole, because it's getting crowded up there now, because they find out it's really usable, not only to live in, but militarily.
Okay, so military, that's one reason why there's a treaty, not to mention the alien craft under the ice. But hey, that's one reason. So when you've got a military base there, you don't want anyone flying over. So hopefully that answers that question. It doesn't mean there's extra land or a dome.
But strangely enough, there's left in the world today an area as big as the United States that's never been seen by a human being. And that's beyond the pole, on the other side of the South Pole. Beyond
the pole. Now, what he's talking about there is the actual pole itself.
From Middle America.
So Middle America's below the Antarctica. So what he's talking about is there's more land. Basically, we know underneath here there was land and there is land. So in other words, when you pass the pole here, you keep going, you'll eventually get to a point where there's no ice, which means that there's land, and that's what he's talking about. It doesn't mean extra land, doesn't mean a dome or anything else. That's what it basically means. So that's what he's talking about. Quickly, to the people that say water should drop off a ball, obviously there's a force because Earth is so big that it's causing its own force to push inwards. Now, what people are a bit silly doing, they don't actually think that they need a control. They're doing these experiments where water will drop off of a ball in the place that's already there. So that's a bit stupid. So what you actually need is a control. In order to do the control, you would need to take your football and the water that you're going to put on it and take it outside of the place that you're actually doing the experiment in. Dumpties. So you need to do that outside, which would be in space. Speaking of space, here it says in Hebrew 11:4, it says the stars in heaven. We can see stars, which means we can also see heaven. Of course we can't see heaven. There's a translation. It should have been space. As the stars in heaven. So everybody, we can see heaven. No, we can't. We can see space. So when you start reading the word firmament, you should really be reading it as atmosphere, and it will make a lot more sense. But obviously people don't want to do that. They want to add everything else that I've just said and make an invisible dome that no one's ever seen, and they make it a flat earth that no one's ever seen. Something that no one's thought of, obviously, except me, is we're talking about the firmament here, which supposedly is his dome. Now, the dome actually goes back to even the time of Enoch. Now, Enoch lived in the Middle East, middle giving you a clue. So Enoch did not go to the side, he did not go to the other side. All he would have seen, even though we can't see it, is the dome at the top. So how the hell did he see the dome at the top from the Middle East? And everyone else that now has moved around the whole planet cannot see any of the dome whatsoever. And please don't say, oh, I saw a shimmering light and therefore it bounced off of the atmosphere, which is what the actual original word for firmament is. So to answer why Enoch could see a firmament and no one else can. Also, just for the people there that keep talking about NASA lying, they do lie. Let me explain something to you. They do and did do live streams, and they actually used to have to cut the live streams because they actually caught UFOs in the live streams. People would see the UFO flying around, so they ended up having to stop doing that live streams because guess what, because they didn't want to show. Now they did end up doing CGI. Now if they did CGI originally right from the beginning, why add UFOs into their live streams and then cut it when the UFO was flying around? Doesn't make sense. You see the logic there. And I mean, we're talking proper UFOs. We're not talking computer glitches. We're talking UFOs. And just because I did a live chat yesterday and someone questioned my IQ level, and I actually had done a couple of tests. I wanted to make sure they were accurate, so I did a few years apart. But basically, I was accepted into Mensa and I refused it. And someone after the live chat sent me a message saying, why the hell did you refuse being part of Mensa? Now, if anyone's done a Mensa test, you'll find out it's just a logic test. That's all it is. So are you saying, because I accept that someone that knows math or spelling or about football or about any other discipline is lesser than me because my logic worked out some logical questions? So if it was a test about math, I would fail. So does that make me smarter than the person that knows absolutely everything about math? No, it doesn't. It just means I had a bit of logic that I applied to that particular logic test. That's why I refused it, because I don't think I'm smarter than someone else that knows other stuff. So it's just a test on logic. That's all it is, and that's why I don't rate it. But I was curious to see what my IQ was. Sorry.